Welcome to another edition of the Litigation Psychology Podcast. Dr. Bill Kanasky here, your host today. This podcast is brought to you by Courtroom Sciences. Check out the website. Good stuff. Articles, blog, this podcast. Got a great guest today. But before I do that, I got to go on my rant. I have a rant every week. And my rant, this is a serious rant. We've all been through this. I'm sick and tired of it. But it's this, this whole inflation thing and the cost of everything going up. Now, this particular problem is getting worse. I'm a big fan of the fruit bowl for breakfast. Okay, get my egg white omelet, maybe with some spinach in there. Always have some cheese, right? Got to have those two things in your egg white omelet. Or like we talked about in San Diego, the breakfast burrito, always a good thing. But I like my fruit bowl, right, as a side. And the problem with the fruit bowl, which has been a problem for a very long time, is they put all the good fruit on top, right? So your berries are on top, and there's like 6 of them. Well, now there's 4 of them. Thank you, inflation. And then the rest of the fruit bowl is what I call filler fruit, which is terrible fruit. This would be honeydew and cantaloupe. Okay, I don't even think they're officially fruits. Okay. I don't think they're fruits. I think they're filler fruits. I think they're cheap, and they put all the good stuff on top. So when it comes out, like, you think like, wow, look at this great fruit bowl, right? You got like 2 raspberries, 2 blackberries, a couple blueberries, a strawberry, if you're fortunate. And then the other 90% underneath that, filler fruit. Cantaloupe and honeydew should be banned. And I think I may start a petition on this because every hotel's doing it to me. And they're charging me, $9.50 for the fruit bowl. Don't get me started on that. That's my fruit bowl rant for the day. Zack Fletcher is with me from Chicago, Illinois. Zack, how are you today?
Good, thanks.
Zack, are you a fan of the fruit bowl at breakfast?
I used to be when I traveled. Now it's just coffee and get to work.
But you know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
The filler fruit.
Yeah, the filler fruit, stuff that you just don't want to eat.
I'm gonna work on a ban on that. I'm gonna call Hilton because Hilton's been doing it to me, and I'm a very big Hilton fan. But man, they've been really getting me with the filler fruit and the fruit bowl. It is making me nuts, amongst other things. So Zack Fletcher, trial attorney, Chicago, Illinois, has agreed to come on the show. And the reason why is we have a mutual friend, Paul Motes, another attorney in Chicago, Illinois. And Paul had told me about Zack's recent trial victory. And I thought, hey, this would be a good time, get some intel, how things are going in the courtroom, like to hear about Zack's case. Zack is with the firm of Wood, Smith, Henning, and Berman. Zack, first question. What in the world made you decide to become a trial lawyer? Was it always, were you one of these guys, like at 7 years old, you were, hey, I'm going to be a trial attorney? Or did you go through maybe several other career choices and just kind of figured out, hey, this seems to be what's best for me?
No, I've got a pretty unique story. And it was mostly out of necessity that I became a trial attorney. I went to law school, and my goal in graduating from law school was to keep people out of court.
Oh, wow.
And I had some unique experiences in law school that led me down a different path in terms of, like, my dad passed away on the second day of the bar exam.
Oh,
and and so I found out that afternoon, as I was taking on the second day of the test, I read this products liability question. It was about a guy who uses whatever product, it gets cancer. And I had to read it probably 7 or 8 times because every time I read it, it was dad has cancer and is dying. And it just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I didn't pass it. I missed it by 2-3 points in my first time. And so I ended up doing other things because I didn't want to put myself through that again and have to take the bar exam. And when I eventually did, I was teaching law, business law, criminal law at Roosevelt University. I decided that, I just need to do this. And so I statistically had a 0% chance of passing the bar exam because it'd been so long. I think it was like 7 years after I graduated.
Wow.
And everybody I talked to was like, "Oh, don't do it. You're wasting your time." And I was just like, you know what? Fine, I won't tell anyone. And I took the bar review book that I had, which was like, probably 500 pages, 600 pages, and I copied the whole thing word for word, and by hand, just decided this is what I'm going to do, and nobody's going to tell me otherwise. And when I did, and I passed it, one of my very good friends was working at a civil defense firm, doing trial work, and he was like, "Hey, I can get you a job." And just out of necessity, it was my first job, as an attorney. I did work at the state's attorney's office while I was in law school as a 7-Eleven, but I took it and then ran with it. My first week I had 3 arbitrations and a bench trial, and that firm that I was with didn't pay me much in terms of money, but I got paid in experience. And once I gained all that experience and had several jury trials, over 10, 12 jury trials, working for that firm, it was pretty well set that was what I was going to do.
Outstanding. That's a great story. Now, are you from Chicago, the Chicago area originally, or are you a transplant?
No, I grew up in Chicago. I've always been. I grew up in Des Plaines, so right near the O'Hare Airport.
That's where I lived. Where I was off of Addison and Harlem Avenue by the hip Irving Plaza, right?
Yep. Yeah. Rolling Stone Records.
You ever drive by there during the Christmas holiday? That's a nightmare.
It sure is.
Absolute nightmare. Yeah. Well, you have a casino now over there, and the Rivers Casino, right?
Yeah, and they couldn't have it in Rosemont, so they put it right next to Rosemont, just on the border.
I heard that was an interesting town hall meeting on both sides. All right.
I'm sure it was.
Unbelievable. Well, that's cool. I kind of miss Chicago, kind of don't miss Chicago. Are you a North Sider? You a Cubby?
Yeah.
Okay, well, so you're just as disgruntled as I am.
Certainly.
Okay.
Certainly.
As long as we're on the same page there. Thank you, 2016. But the pain just comes right back. It's the halo effect from that, right? The afterglow from the World Series. It lasted a couple of years, but now we're just back to criticizing management. So it's a rebuild. Don't get me started on the Bears, because that would take the rest of the podcast. Tell us about your firm and the types of law, the types of causes of action that you're involved in.
So Woodsmith, Henning, and Berman is based in LA. That's where their home office is, but they have offices across the US. Our office that I'm based out of is in Chicago. I think we have 6 or 7 attorneys now working in the Chicago office. And there are offices in all the major areas, major metropolitan areas, Las Vegas, LA, New York. We have offices in Florida, I think a new office in Texas. We're just all over the place. Wow. And my work is defense work, obviously, but I have sort of a broad sense of different types of litigation that I cover. Pretty much anything that the partner in my office comes to me with that's weird or unusual. I don't say no very often.
You better learn how to eventually.
Yeah, I probably should, but it gives me a lot of experience doing different types of cases. And this trial is definitely one of those where, it was a homeowners association case. So
I'm working on a couple of those. They're quite wild. Can you I obviously don't mention any party names, but can you maybe just kind of outline the facts of this case and kind of take us through your recent experience with the trial process? I think that'd be interesting, because things have changed post-COVID.
Yeah, this was a very interesting one, because there were very few settlement negotiations that happened beforehand. Plaintiff was represented initially by an attorney and fired his attorney and decided to proceed pro se. And the pre-trial litigation was primarily focused on amending his complaint 6 times, and very little discovery was actually done. There was written discovery completed, but no depositions were taken. And then we ended up, we made a strategic decision because the plaintiff filed his 213 witness disclosures in Illinois, and he didn't disclose himself as a witness. And so we saw this, we knew that trial was coming up, and I drafted and filed a motion in limine to bar him from testifying. And the court saw it differently because he responded, and as pro se, they kind of cut him every bit of slack that they could throughout the entire litigation. So my defense of the case was working in loops where I filed the motion to bar him under 213F. He filed a motion to amend his disclosures to include himself, saying, oh, well, I'm pro se, I didn't know, and I forgot to include myself. The court said, okay, fine, we'll let you amend. We don't see any prejudice or surprise, which were the entire basis of why I said he should be barred, because if he was allowed to testify, we would be prejudiced and fully surprised on what he had to say. And so we, excuse me, we got done with the hearing, and the judge said, okay, that's it. And I said, well, Judge, I need to file a motion, make a motion rather, to continue the trial. And I would also like to depose the plaintiff. And the judge said, well, we've got a week before trial, so you can do it, and I'll continue the trial for 1 day. So we got a 1-day continuance, and we did end up deposing him beforehand. The plaintiff was based in Florida. He had moved out of state. And so we deposed him, and then we went to trial, and there were no settlement negotiations because the plaintiff, he gave us a settlement memo that said my case is worth 5 million, maybe 8 to 10, but I'll cut you a deal.
Of course.
And it was so generous of him.
What a discount. Hey.
Yeah, his discount was, I'll take 1.35 million and non-negotiable. And I'm just, how do you respond to that?
What a great deal.
Go to trial. And then, so we had a pretrial conference scheduled to settle, or to talk about settlement with the judge. And we filed our position statement, and the plaintiff canceled it and said he didn't have any time to prepare, which I didn't quite understand, because either he has to say, yes, I'll accept what you're offering, or no. It's pretty simple from a plaintiff's point of view, I would think. So it was stricken and never occurred. And we had sort of hoped the judge would help the plaintiff see the light in terms of the pitfalls in his case and the risk associated with going to trial, which just never happened. So we were forced to go to trial, and we filed approximately 60 motions in limine. A big chunk of them, I would say 30 were substantive, and then the rest were procedural. It was the majority of them were denied initially, but needed to be revisited because the plaintiff was trying to claim personal injury damages in this case. And the general facts of the case are that he was a tenant in a building that passed a special assessment under emergency measures to replace the risers for the water, which was potable water, so not like toilet water, but it was potable water for the building. And the building, as far back as 2015 had experienced breaks and leaks and pipe bursts that had damaged many of the units. And so they had an engineer come in and say, well, this is a hazard, and there's a likelihood of it's an emergency. It needs to be taken care of now. So the plaintiff had a problem with paying for the special assessment. He had a problem with keeping up with his normal assessments, and rather than paying it, he ended up trying to sell, which did not go as he planned. This was during COVID, and he was asking too much, had problems selling, and eventually did sell, and then sued the association and its board of directors, saying that they committed fraud and embezzlement.
Wow.
During the process of the passing the special assessment, violation of the Not-for-Profit Corporation Act, breach of fiduciary duty, violation of the Illinois Condominium Property Act, and then violation of the Federal Debt Collection Practices Act. And those were his 5 causes of action. And during the constant amended complaints, somehow he was allowed to file a prayer for punitive damages as well.
That's absolutely incredible. Now, is this Cook County?
Yes.
Which is, labeled a judicial hellhole. Was this a jury trial?
It was a jury trial.
Tell me about, well, I want you to tell me how the jury selection process went, and also how you approached jury selection, given that it's post-COVID, the whole world, and particularly Chicago, has been kind of turned upside down and on its head and put through the spin cycle. How you approached jury selection, and kind of what your strategy was, given that so much has changed.
Jury selection, which we found out after the trial, really paid off for us.
Usually does.
Yeah. The plaintiff asked a lot of questions that were silly.
Yep.
And it was clear that he didn't have experience or know what he was doing. But he asked questions about, he had some quote that he attributed to Spider-Man.
Really?
And
the Spider-Man, the Spider-Man voir dire?
With great power comes great responsibility. And he was asking, do you believe in this? And, he's like, I think it was Spider-Man that said this. And one of the prospective jurors on the veneer, the first one, blurted out, like, I'm pretty sure a real person said that, not Spider-Man. So immediately there was some question as to his legitimacy of what he was trying to do. But our approach was to try and ferret out bias as much as possible. So I asked questions that were specifically aimed at, do you have a condo association? Have you ever been a board member? Do you have anyone close to you who's had a negative experience with condo associations? And so we asked pretty focused questions around that, which ended up paying off because we were able to get an extra challenge. One of them for cause was granted on a juror who we thought would be pretty badly against us if they were put on the panel. And so we went through 2 panels, and when the second panel came up, and we were nearing the end of the process with the judge, we had one more person who we needed to seat on the jury. And there was a tax attorney, a woman who was a tax attorney, and her husband was an attorney as well. And they were 2 out of our reach. We had one peremptory challenge left, and the plaintiff had 1 left. Wow. And so we struck somebody to get 1 away from that person, who they weren't really forthcoming with a lot of information. They were pretty quiet, didn't answer questions.
That's a red flag. Yep.
Yeah. So we struck them and thought, and I said to my co-defense counsel, who represented one of the co-defendants, I had said, hey, he's got a challenge burning a hole in his pocket. I know he's going to use it. And he did. And he didn't think in terms of chess, he was playing checkers. Yeah. And so he was like, well, I'll get this person out because I think they're bad for me. And we thought the person he struck would have been beneficial to us. But by striking that person, it seated the tax attorney. which we found out after the verdict came in, that the tax attorney was instrumental in dispelling the notion that because the case had made it this far and gone to trial, that it must have some merit. And so the jurors were deliberating and talking about how they felt, well, it made it this far, there must be something to it.
Yeah.
And she was instrumental in saying, no, that's not the case. He has to prove his case. And so that was one of the reasons, or one of the ways, that we were able to get the defense verdict.
That's incredible. Great story. Talk to me about opening statement. And the way we met was that, Paul reached out and said, hey, my former colleague, got a defense verdict. He said he read one of your articles about, primacy and recency and opening statement construction. And how did you go about constructing your opening? I mean, that's a really, really important part of a case. I've been studying it, opening statement construction, and the neuroscience behind it for 20 years. And I see a lot of mistakes, particularly by defense counsel, and how they organize their information. And it's not the what they're saying, but it's the how and the when they're saying it, and typically the length of time that they're taking. What was your approach?
My approach was to keep it simple and keep it short.
Yeah.
I didn't want to confuse the jury or belabor them with facts of this case necessarily. I gave them a 10-foot overview of what was going on. But when I was drafting my opening, I pulled up, you have an article on your website, The Secret Weapons of Opening Statements. And through my work with Paul, I was fully aware, and I think I even had some cases that we've used courtroom sciences when I was working with Paul. And I know how effective your work is, because I've seen it on high exposure cases. And I thought, well, this is the time for that. And so with potential punitive damages, I mean, you just don't know where it can go from there. And so I looked at the article about primacy, recency, and there were terms in the article that I really liked. And so rather than getting in the trenches and fighting with, well, the plaintiff says this and that's really not true, I just created our story. And exactly. And it was, I had some things in there that I thought might draw objections, but he was a pro se plaintiff, and it's only objectionable if the objection is made. And there was none. So I had the opportunity to use phrases like conspiracy theories, things that might not have gotten in if there was another attorney on the other side. But I told the story from our perspective of the homeowners association or the condo association, in terms of we are working as a team for the benefit of all. And this is not a case where you can point to any smoking gun and say, well, here's where the fraud or the embezzlement occurred, because there is none. And so how do I get up there and prove a negative? It's not by walking through the plaintiff's allegations step by step. I said, you're not going to hear any of this. And when I get up here in my closings, I'm going to tell you exactly how you didn't hear any of this. And I just asked them specifically to hold the plaintiff to his burden, make him show you exactly what happened. And if it doesn't make sense, then there's nothing to award him.
Yeah, that's outstanding. I find that a lot of attorneys on both sides, actually, when they're constructing opening statement, I think there's this emotional pressure to, you have to advocate for your client to the best of your ability, and that means more is better, right? Well, no, no, it doesn't. Simplicity is my best friend. right now in life. I wish it always wasn't always. Sometimes I've made things far more complicated, but I know when it comes to explaining a case to a jury that simplicity is best. I think the problem with simplicity is that, emotionally as the attorney, sometimes you feel, well, this isn't enough, right? And you're kind of battling inside. Did you have some maybe parts of the opening like, I'm putting it in, nope, I'm taking it out, no, I'm putting it in, no, I'm taking it out?
I did,
Yeah.
but I ended up keeping it in, and really it was
Mm.
just, it was a couple lines,
Yeah.
and I just started with it right up front. And the first words out of my mouth were that the plaintiff's case has more holes in it than a Swiss cheese donut. And
Objection. I object.
not a single objection. And I know as I read through your articles, I'd seen a lot of this play out because my first job, I had a lot of arbitrations that I
Yeah.
handled in Cook County. And these mandatory arbitrations are with a panel of 3 plaintiffs' attorneys. So as a defense attorney walking in, I'm already at a disadvantage.
Sure.
And I'd done enough of them to know that they're going to fall asleep in 30 seconds. And I'd watched it happen because they're getting paid either way,
Yeah.
and they don't care. And so the best thing I can do is, I mean, in those instances, a lot of times I would even waive my opening statement and say, you're going to see what the evidence is in about 30 seconds. Just hold the plaintiff to their burden, please. And so because of that, I believed it when I saw it in your articles that you don't want to go on and on. And,
Yeah.
it was something that I just keep it simple, keep it quick, keep their entertainment, keep their focus on
Yeah.
me. And it was something that the plaintiff, when he didn't move the podium around, and I certainly did within the well. I used all of those things that I had learned
Yeah.
throughout my experience, and even in trial ad and law school. But I moved the podium so that the jury couldn't even see the plaintiff when I was giving my opening. They would have had
Nice.
to look across the room to see what this guy's reaction or response was, and their focus was entirely on me. And I did the same thing with my closing, where I made him turn off
Yep.
his exhibits. I made him, turn off the TV, turn it around, and then I moved the podium again so that their focus is directly on me and what I'm saying.
Yeah. There's a lot of little things that can have huge impacts that just don't get talked about a lot, and it goes well beyond the words, the content, the facts. So it sounds like it played your cards right. I'm glad that the information we had was helpful. I speak on that topic a lot. It's really a fascinating topic, and I can tell you one thing. Plaintiff attorneys get a lot of additional training, and they pay a lot of money for it, for storytelling, modeling, ordering of information, and I see that as a big area where the defense bar can certainly improve. Well, now here's a great question: how long did the jury deliberate?
Under an hour.
So you
It
went to get a
was,
cup of coffee and you were halfway through and you're like, oh yeah.
I had taken 3 sips, and
Yeah.
I got the phone call from the sheriff.
It's a good
Come
sign.
on. And I thought for sure, like, well, it's just a question. They're going to have a
Yeah.
question. They want to, nope. Came right back, and we've got a verdict. And we had, so we had made several motions that were denied, and sort of working in a circular fashion. We brought up again before, at the close of evidence, we brought up our directed verdict motion, and the court directed out 4 of the 5 counts. So they had found that there wasn't any evidence that a jury could even deliberate on
Wow.
the fraud and embezzlement claim, the Not-for-Profit Corporation Act claim, the Illinois Condominium Property Act, or the Debt Collection Practices Act. So the only claim, or the only cause of action that they were allowed to deliberate on, was breach of fiduciary duty.
Excellent.
And we also similarly barred his nephrologist from testifying, which was initially denied. Our motion in limine to bar his doctor, which we remade that motion during trial, and argued it. And the court said to the plaintiff, do you have any case law that would support personal injury damages being awarded in this instance? And his response was, the defense filed so many motions in limine, I didn't have time to prepare anything. I wasn't able to prepare for this, which again was part of our strategy.
Yeah.
It was, file as many motions in limine as we can in good faith.
Mm-hmm.
And we kept him busy. And, I don't think he was prepared for the preparation that we brought on the defense side. On his side, he just didn't know what he was getting into.
In any case, preparation is the key. And like I always say, early, not late preparation. Zach, I got 2 phone calls this week. I'm going to choke somebody. I'm going to choke somebody till they turn blue. They call me and they're like, we've got this huge depth, of our corporate rep. I'm like, okay, well, you need help? Yeah, we need your help. When's the depth? They're like, next week. What do you, I'm like, next week. Holy shit. I'm like, no. Why? Well, you woke up this morning going, you know what? I think we need to prep our corporate depth. That makes me crazy. Are you a fan of early preparation? I would hope so.
Absolutely. In fact, that's how we came to all of these motions in limine. As I'm working through a case, for example, I keep an Excel spreadsheet that every time I come across something in discovery that I know I'm going to eventually bring a motion in limine on, it's in there with reference to the page number. One of the most frequent things that comes up in that regard is when a plaintiff will complain about, well, I couldn't do this because I didn't have insurance coverage. That's an immediate, for me, you couldn't treat because you had no insurance coverage. That's a motion in limine, and I've gotten it granted many times. And so I'm constantly preparing early. It's about identifying where you could be exposed.
Yes.
And doing that early so that you're not playing catch up and you're not behind the 8 ball.
Yeah. I mean, the sooner you figure out where your problems are, you more time to fix them, more leverage. Well, congratulations on the big trial victory. I have a couple more questions for you before we conclude. And this is more for the young. I have a lot of younger attorneys on the podcast. We have a huge following of younger attorneys, and they love this podcast because they want to learn. They want to be better. And I like to ask questions about, career development, some skills that maybe you currently use. And the first one I have is, what do you do mentally to prepare for trial? We know what you do physically, right? As far as physical prep for trial, what do you do mentally to get your head in the right spot? Because listen, trials are stressful, not just for the client. It's stressful for all attorneys. What do you do to kind of stay healthy, but I guess both physically and mentally, so you are razor sharp and focused?
For this one specifically, I was actually dealing with pneumonia. Yeah.
Ouch.
It was, so physically, that was a tougher place to be in. But I use that, and my experience at past firms is, especially when I worked with Paul, for example, we had a lot of trials, and it's not an excuse that you're not feeling well physically.
Yeah.
The court doesn't care. No one cares. And so I just got that out of my head right away. And meditation is definitely something I try and use on an everyday basis. And
it works.
It was something, it does.
It works. I need to get back into it. I need to get back into it because I'm so terrible at it, because I have the hamster wheel has a problem slowing down with me.
It's certainly not easy, especially when you've got trial brain going on.
Yeah.
And all you're doing is focused on this set of facts. And I can't tell you how many times I've had other outside things just pass me by, because I've got trial brain and I'm focused on I've got this trial and I need to know these facts and I need to know where everything is and keep everything straight. And so meditation is a great way to shut it all out entirely. And the other thing I use is music. I'm a huge music fan, and
Oh, what kind of
all
music?
types
What
of
kind of music, Zach?
anything other than barking into a microphone. Although, I mean, I guess there are merits with that as well at times. If you're, I guess, really angry or something. But I mean, I'm all across the board. The guy at the record store that I frequently go to had no idea. Like, I might walk out with a Stravinsky record and a Prince record and a Miles Davis record all at one
Nice.
time. I mean, and just, it doesn't matter.
Prince is one of my favorite artists, by the way. Prince
Oh,
is,
really?
and I mean, an amazing. Too bad we lost him early. I'm a huge
I
Prince
know.
fan, but you know,
Yeah.
when I'm in trial mode, yeah, I'm hitting the Metallica and the Guns N' Roses pretty hard. I got to tell you.
I go the other way. When I'm in trial mode, I need that, like, maybe Chopin's Nocturnes,
Okay,
or Ray Charles has a couple jazz albums that are really good.
interesting.
And so I just need that, like, I've got Metallica already going on in my
Yeah,
head, and it's like, I don't need to ramp that up more. I'm trying to cut through that and give myself 10 minutes of serenity.
yeah.
So I can,
I think that's good. Another thing I would tell trial attorneys to maintain your mental health before and during trial. Which I violate this all the time, and I did it this week. I don't want to get this started, but I'm going to open up this can of worms. Do not watch college sports that you care about during trial, because when your team suffers a horrendous upset, it's going to throw your game off mentally, and you're going to be kicking and screaming and terribly disappointed. It's been a rough couple of weeks for me. That's all. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not mentioning names, but yeah, I think mental health is a big deal. Staying focused, getting enough rest, and I like the music idea. I think that's great, and change it up and do whatever works for you there. How would you and you've been down, because so this firm that you're currently at, multiple offices, nationwide, but before you're at more of a boutique, right? Smaller defense firm. From the young attorney perspective, say if you're a young attorney and you're deciding, what type of firm should I go to? Like, what would you say are the pros and cons of each, or what are the major differences of both types of work settings?
so as a young attorney, I ended up at several firms, and I moved around a little bit, but I ended up at several firms where I was paid more in experience than I was in dollars. I know,
That's priceless. Rarely is.
and it is. And at the time, I wasn't really receptive to that message.
Yeah. When my mortgage comes in and my electric bill,
Right, right. But now, having come out the other side of that, with a lot of experience that many partners don't have in large law firms, trial experience, arbitration experience, even bench trial experience. Get it, take it, run with it. You're learning things that you may not even consciously pick up on until after the fact. And so, if this is what you want to do and you want to try cases, my best advice is to find the place that will give you that, and take it. And it may not be, they're not always glorious cases. I had plenty of rear ender car accidents that I had to go through.
Hey, trial's a trial.
Right. And
Trial's
you learn how to make those arguments, and you can't get up there and say they went to a chiropractor, they didn't go to a real doctor.
Yeah.
You may be thinking it, you may, but there's ways of sort of implying it, especially when you're cross-examining a chiropractor.
Yeah.
But it's hard to really get up there and genuinely make that argument because they're called doctor. And I've made those arguments and seen them fall flat. So I've just learned, like, don't do that stupid stuff anymore.
Yeah. Okay. This is great stuff. Final question. If you had to give You just mentioned a few things. Maybe there's a couple others. You had to give the, the kind of younger attorney, maybe years, what, 2 through 4, right? You had to give younger attorneys, some advice, some guidance, maybe what not to do. Maybe what advice would you, what advice would you give yourself back then? Like, oh gosh, I wish I would have did that differently. Cause yeah, you're going to run into pitfalls in your career. What advice would you give young attorneys what not to do? I think number one is don't just pay attention to the money, because it is the experience and the mentorship. How about maybe a couple of other things, to some pitfalls maybe to avoid or to be looking out for?
Sure. The first one I would say is when you're defending or taking a plaintiff step, for example, it's not just a simple march through the facts. You need to be thinking about trial from the outset, and you need to be making you need to be getting the testimony that you need out of this plaintiff. And by coming out and asking them, like, do you wear glasses? And which may be relevant in some circumstances, or, what's your educational background? And spending a lot of time on, like, where'd you go to high school? How's that relevant? Like, it's not. So there's a lot of outlines that you get as a young attorney that will have all of that formulaic approach to how to depose this plaintiff.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, don't do that. Find the articles that you guys have on reversing the reptile. Find ways to come out swinging.
Yep.
And sometimes the best defense is a good offense.
Agreed.
And so you need to start that immediately with your cases when you get them, and to try and wait until you have an evidence step, or you're getting into treaters or other people's step. It's too late at that point. Start early.
Yeah. And the fact that you it sounds like you did some homework as far as reading my articles and probably some other things
For years.
too. And you're a younger attorney, and so I'm sure the billable hours hanging over your head 24/7. I imagine you think it's important to carve out some time, whether it be weekly or whatever, to try to get ahead on your skill set and your knowledge base, right?
I do. It is important. It's difficult. And sometimes it eats into your personal time, but you're left with this choice of, do I want to just float through and be okay? Or do you want to be good or try and get better at what you're doing? And I'm not saying I'm good, but I'm getting better. I feel like that is definitely the case. And each time you go through a trial or an arbitration or even a bench trial, it's another chance for you to learn and find ways that you can continue to get ahead.
Cram in those learning opportunities. Zack, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This was great. Keep in touch. I'd love to work with you. That would be fun.
That'd be great.
That'd be awesome. And next time I'm in Chicago, I'm going to look you up and we're going to have coffee. Cool.
Sounds great.
Awesome. And thank you. Yeah. And no problem. And it was a really great story, and congratulations on your win. And to our audience members, thank you for listening and participating in another edition, the Litigation Psychology Podcast. See you.